Hey, good afternoon, folks. This is Robert Chappell, Executive Editor at Madison365. I keep forgetting to swap out that graphic. I have that one graphic up, and then the little song goes, the new little intro thing. And during that little intro video countdown, I'm supposed to switch the graphics so that I'm not covered up. And I keep forgetting to do that. I just get so lost in that little... Okay, anyway, so here we are. It is... What day is it? It is Tuesday, sorry, January 19th. And I am really on top of it today, you can tell. Today we have really good news on COVID. We got some good news on some other things as well. But first, I want to talk about our sponsor, Forward Theater Company, presenting The Niceties by Eleanor Burgess, a drama featuring clashing perspectives on race, history, and power in America. This virtual theater experience, streaming online January 22nd through February 7th. Tickets are available now at forwardtheater.com. That's theater with an ER, not theater with an RE, forwardtheater.com. And we thank Forward Theater Company for their continued support. So the coronavirus news today, again, is not terrible. I mean, it kind of is terrible, but any day that the news is less terrible than the day before is, I guess is a good day. So we have just under 5,100 tests today. So testing is still on the low side today. Less than 5,100 tests today. We had just it's actually fewer tests today than yesterday, but more cases today than yesterday. So on just a daily reported basis, the news is not great. 5,086 tests processed, or I should say reported today, of which 1,525 are positive. So, that's about 30% positive today, which is, not great, but again, that one day, just the percentage of those that are reported today is not an important number. The important number is the 7-day average, because all those tests that were reported today actually took place sometime over the past 2 or 3 days. So when you allocate them out and you put each of those tests and results on the correct day, that'll give you an accurate 7-day look at what the rates are. And the rate of all people testing positive today is 23.9%, which is still really high. It's still almost 1 in 4. However, yesterday it was 24.6. So 0.7 of a point down from one day to the next is pretty good. The positive rate for all tests, which takes into account that many people are tested multiple times each week, that's down to 7.4. Yesterday it was 7.8. So every time we go lower, that's the lowest it's ever been. Like, we're at the lowest point that we've ever been at for that number since the state has started reporting it back in October. Okay, that's the key number. That's 7.4. To me, that's the key number that I look at, because that's the one we want to get below 3, right? If 3% of tests are coming back positive, we can reasonably say we have this thing under control. Or at least that we've got kind of our arms around it, right? So 7.4, obviously still really high. For me personally, if I was calling the shots, 7.4 is too high to be opening schools and opening businesses and that kind of stuff. That ship has sailed, right? The government is not going to help us out with that. But if we keep doing what we are doing, we collectively, who are not going to bars, who are not just running to the store for one thing, who are doing our shopping in a safer manner, who are not going to family gatherings, who are not going to parties, that kind of stuff. If we keep doing that, we can get that number below 3, and then keep it there until we're all vaccinated, and then we can go back to normal maybe at some point. So that 7.4 number is still too high, but it's headed in the right direction. And that's what I want to keep focusing on, so we can stay both optimistic and vigilant at the same time, right? We can stay vigilant without being scared for our lives. And we can be optimistic without loosening up, right? I want everybody to stay optimistic and vigilant at the same time. Does that make sense? Now, we also are seeing 42 deaths reported today, which is not great. Unfortunately, there's a little technical glitch with the data that's coming in, so I can't see which counties they're in, but I can see that there's 42 deaths reported. I would bet that a sizable number of those are Milwaukee County, as Milwaukee County seems to be catching up on its reporting the past couple of days. So that brings our total death toll to 5,512, which is, it's a lot. That's, I mean, again, 42 deaths in a day being reported. Again, those are not that happened today. Those are being reported today, but still, that's a lower number than we've seen the last several Tuesdays. So again, that's okay. That's not bad. If it's bad, 42 people dying in a single day of a single disease is bad. Considering that heart disease, the number one cause of death in Wisconsin, kills like 31 people a day. Okay, so 42 is a lot. But again, it's one of those numbers that's too high, but it's getting better. So we're optimistic. Jenna, that's a great question. I will get to that in just a minute. I'm just going to finish up these. The one thing I want to say about vaccinations, we have now 40,130 residents of Wisconsin have completed their COVID-19 vaccination series, meaning they've gotten both shots. And that's about 4,000 more since yesterday. Okay, so we're doing what we're seeing right now is about 4,000 to 5,000 people getting their second shot every day. So again, I don't have anything to benchmark that against. I don't know if that's a good number. I mean, it seems like 5,000 shots seems like a lot to me, but we'll keep an eye on that. And if we're so that we know, like 2 weeks from now, if we get to 10,000 shots, that's great. If we're down to 2,000 shots, that's bad, right? So that's kind of our beginning baselines. Right now, we're at 4,000 to 5,000 every day. Total, 248,185 shots have been given, which means, let me do some math quick. I'm an English major, right? So I don't do math in my head. Roughly, give or take, about 168,000 people have gotten that first shot, but not the second one yet. Okay. Again, that is a minuscule, it sounds like it's a big number, but it's a minuscule percentage of the population, right? So it's going to have to keep going faster. I'm going to be talking at some point in the next couple of days, I think, with Dr. Ashok Ray, who is the CEO of Prevent Health, who's been really up in Green Bay, who's been really aggressive about vaccine and getting vaccine clinics set up and mobile sites and community vaccination sites and things. I'm going to talk a little bit about logistics with him just to find out how they're doing and, more importantly, how they're prioritizing people. Because that's the big question right now is who's even allowed to go get one, right? It's not super clear. So I'm going to be asking some questions about that in the next couple of days, and I hope to get you up to speed on that, because that's obviously the next big part of this whole story is how do we get vaccinated? And it sounds like, the Biden administration, the incoming Biden administration is going to be really focusing on that. How do we get everybody vaccinated before this thing mutates enough that the vaccine is no longer effective? How many people do we have to get vaccinated? If you consider that at least 10% of the state population has already been infected once. Are they immune now? Do they need to get vaccinated? I don't know. All those kind of questions that I get paid to ask. It's my job to ask. They're very annoying questions, and people in authority get annoyed when you keep asking questions like that. But that's what I do. It's my job. Okay, so now Jenna has a question. Does this include the EW with the new protocols testing every employee every 8 days? How do you suppose that will affect numbers? It's a terrific question, and the answer is more complicated than it should be. Yes, the short answer is yes, it includes UW. What makes it complicated is that affects the 7-day total test rate, the 7.4%. It affects that number. That's the only number it really affects. It will affect, obviously, it'll affect the total positive test rate, or the total number of positive tests for each UW employee that tests positive, right? I think it is, UW obviously employs a lot of people, but in the overall scheme of the entire state population, it's not that huge of a percentage of people. So I don't think UW testing people a lot will drive down the percentage artificially. I don't think it's that big. I don't think it's a big enough population to do that. Does that make sense? But I do think that having that number of tests happening on campus just increases the total number of tests, which does not get reported in that daily number of tests. That 5,100 tests I told you isn't going to include any of those people, because that 5,100 is just people who are getting a new result for the first time, either their first test ever that's negative, or their first positive test is in that 5,100. So there's like 30,000 tests that'll happen on a day that kind of not really hidden, but that don't get into that daily test number, but that do affect the 7-day positive test rate. Okay, that's why that positive test rate can go down even while, like today, a day like today, where the number of positive cases goes up, the 7-day rate goes down because there's a whole bunch of negative tests that aren't reported in this one day because they're not a new negative test. It's complicated. It's unfortunately complicated. It sounds ridiculous to even try to explain, but that's what I'm getting at. And like I said, I think your instinct is correct that this new population of people who's getting tested might drive that positive test rate down artificially. First of all, I don't think the population is big enough to really do that. But secondly, even if it is, I think that's okay, because we have this whole population of people who are testing negative, and we know they're testing negative. And if one of them tests positive, that pops up as positive, and we can isolate that person, and that kind of thing. So I think if just more testing gives us a more accurate picture. That's really what it comes down to. And if that means that the picture looks rosier than we thought it did, that's great. That means the reality is things are better than we thought. If it goes the other way, the reality is things are worse than we thought. That's good to know too, right? So I think overall it's a good thing the other way. Margie has a comment here. Appreciate the information we can share about Wisconsin opening up vaccines to people 65 and older. I haven't heard anything specific about that. I do know that there's some pressure to do that. And I would not be the least bit surprised if Karen Timberlake, the new interim DHS secretary, pulls that trigger. It makes sense. It just logically makes sense to me that you would offer it to everybody over 65 if you can. Now, the question is, well, see, here you go. Margie's ahead of me. DHS announced today that starting January 25th. Thank you, Margie. I appreciate it. This is news to me. Obviously, I missed a press release, which happens frequently. So starting January 25th, it's going to be eligible, open to anybody. I'll have to look for that to get some more details about it. I think it's good. I think it's great. It makes, like I said, it makes perfect sense because it's not just that person that gets protected, right? In theory, ideally, It's everybody that person comes in contact with. And if my parents are both over 65, if they both get the vaccine, I'd feel much more comfortable going to visit them because they only live a mile away and I haven't seen them in a long time, which sucks, you know? So, yeah, the practicalities are an issue, however. You still have to be able to, we're still not at a point, really, where you can just get them at Walgreens. I mean, that's the goal. The Moderna vaccine apparently would be easier than the Pfizer one to do at like your local pharmacy. But the AstraZeneca and the Johnson & Johnson ones, which are now apparently delayed, the single dose vaccines, those are going to be the ones you can just burn through at Walgreens and CVS, right? That you can just get to every corner pharmacy, every chain. But again, as DJ mentions, yeah, it'll take a couple of months. I would be surprised. 2 months seems really optimistic to me, to be honest with you. Just knowing the number of, here, let me check something real quick. We have, they report to us the number of vaccines that have been shipped. Let's see if I can find it here. I didn't make note of it just now, but let me look. Oh, they updated this some more. So we have almost 780,000 doses that have been allocated to Wisconsin. And there are 100,100 in transit. How many? That doesn't tell us how many we have on hand, however. So still, that's, supposedly that's 50,000 people. It's a lot of people. But I think it'll be a month or two before they can start even just where you can just go to your healthcare clinic and get it. Like I'm not sure I see that on the horizon at all. I think it's entirely possible that, the healthcare systems like UW Health, SSM, GHC might be able to start, calling in, communicating with their 65-year-old patients and saying, come in and get it. That might be in a month or two away. And it'll be several months after that before everybody gets it, because it's going to be a pain to get it and then come back in 3 weeks and then wait like 2 more weeks until you're fully immune. So I don't mean to be pessimistic, but I think it's going to continue to be difficult and logistically challenging. It's really good news that it's open to anybody over 65. I think that's really good news. In terms of actually how that plays out, we will see. I think there's enough urgency that we can make it happen. Margie also notes something that came in. Evers did this, I think, yesterday. Actually, he signed the executive order, and it's just kind of getting out today. That he extended the mask mandate for 2 months, which is virtually meaningless because it's not being enforced. Obviously, we saw a lot of people in bars watching the Packers over the weekend. I expect more of that this weekend. But again, we're at the point now where things are under control enough that even spikes from super spreader type events like that haven't really taken hold, right? So that's good. So even if a bunch of people spread it to each other at the Packers bar, that's bad, and that could actually impact the statewide numbers. But it'll if Christmases are, well, both Thanksgiving and Christmas, there were little spikes, but they were short because the rest of us are doing our part to keep it contained, right? Yeah, I hate to say it's a mess, but it is. I mean, it's just one of these massive infrastructure projects that government used to be really good at, but isn't so much anymore. You can speculate as to why that is, but yeah, the Biden administration is definitely going to ramp things up. Exactly how, hard to say, but I feel like there'll be much less. I don't know, much less obstruction, much less hand wringing about it. I think they're just going to start writing checks and pumping out money and pumping out vaccine. So, fingers crossed. Here's hoping. We'll say a little bit more about the Biden administration. We'll say a little bit more about the Evers administration. I've got a little item about that, along with some other local news. In just a minute. Do not scroll away. We'll talk inauguration. We'll talk unemployment benefits, and we'll talk about one of the original kings of comedy coming up in right after this. Okay, on the state level today, it's just I'm not trying to be partisan, but the leadership of this legislature, regardless of their party, continue to make a mockery of their duties. They have been sharply critical of the Evers administration and its failure on the unemployment front. Now, you'll remember going all the way back to spring, a lot of people had a really hard time getting their unemployment benefits because we saw just such a crush of people who were laid off in like March and April of last year, who began applying for unemployment benefits. And that unemployment benefit system is difficult to navigate under normal circumstances, right? The computer system was built during the Nixon administration. It is not kept up to date. And the guy who was in charge of, can't remember his name, I'm sorry, but he was fired and replaced. And the legislative leaders have been sharply critical of the governor for this problem. And, it's a justified criticism in my mind. So Governor Evers, during the State of the State, announced that he would call a special session of the legislature to allocate some resources to updating the unemployment system. He basically said, yep, Robin Voss, you are right. Representative LeMahieu, you are right. This is a problem. We need to address it. So he called a special session. And today, they gavelled in and gavelled back out and didn't do anything. It's just a mockery of their jobs. Like, there's a whole bunch of legislators who I'm sure want to do the job. And the leadership continues to do absolutely nothing. Like, you have to tell people who are owed unemployment, who are owed money from the federal government and from the state government, who can't get it because the system is just not working. So they tell Evers to fix it. He says, okay, help me fix it. And they say no. So anyway, again, it has nothing to do with their party. If they were whatever party they were with, that they did, whoever's leading this mockery, this ridiculous charade of legislative leadership, I would be just as critical. It's really just absurd. On the federal level, obviously tomorrow is the inauguration. Next time I talk to you, there will be a new president and a new vice president. It sounds like the ceremony will continue outside. It will continue at the front of the Capitol. We have a very small crowd. And there'll be some ceremonial. They're going to light some candles in memory of people who died of COVID, which will be the first time a president has acknowledged those we've lost, really, in any serious way. I do not anticipate big protests here in Madison. I might be wrong. There have been some concern that there will be protests and possibly violence at the inauguration. There's a tremendous security at the inauguration in Washington, D.C. There's also going to be a significant presence down here in Madison. There was a significant presence on Sunday when it was thought that there were going to be some protests in Madison on Sunday. Nobody really turned up. A couple people with some flags, that's about it. So it doesn't seem like there's going to be anything in Madison. I just think the air has gone out of those sails. You know what I mean? The wind is out of those sails. They don't have any social media platform to organize anymore. Trump said, stop it. And I think they will. I think for the most part they will. So we'll see. I might be wrong, but I don't anticipate anything happening in Madison. If anything does, we will certainly let you know about it. But the inauguration happens 11 o'clock Central tomorrow. So I'd encourage you to tune in and watch. A couple of local things to mention. First of all, you might have heard about Aaron Perry, who's a local guy here in Madison. He's become known as a national leader in men's health, especially black men's health. And he's actually opened a clinic inside a barbershop, because that's where he figured out he could reach black men who often don't go to the doctor when they need to. And you know, there's as we've seen with the vaccine debate, that there's very earned mistrust between black folks in the medical community, right? So, and you know, men are just, as men, we just kind of are often hesitant to go to the doctor or just forget it or just don't think about it. So Aaron Perry, this Rebalanced Life Wellness Association, has put a premium on black men's health. And he's got this whole thing now where you can go get your hair cut, and while you're there, get your blood pressure checked. You know, that kind of thing. So he's got this event that he does every January. It's kind of a New Year's resolution event. It's called Off to a Good Start. And it's this Saturday. It's online, obviously. It's virtual, January 23rd. But the keynote speaker at that event, I'm so excited about this, is D.L. Hughley, one of the original kings of comedy, going back, you know, whatever that was. I was there like early 90s. Am I wrong with that? Late 80s, early 90s. So he'll be here in Madison virtually as the keynote speaker of this event. So Madison365.org right now, we got a story, a preview story about this. So you can go there and get the link and, you know, get all set to tune in there on Saturday the 23rd. And the last thing I'll mention today is the Latino Consortium for Action put together a fund early in the pandemic, specifically for Latino and Hispanic families, particularly for undocumented families who, for many reasons, obviously have difficulty accessing resources, especially government resources. So they did a bunch of fundraising in the spring, created this fund, and doled out just a lot of money to folks who just needed a little help with rent, with paying the bills, that kind of stuff. They've announced today in this sort of Zoom press conference that they are reopening that fund because the need still exists. And it exists even more now in some cases for some things. The people are behind on stuff. So that's the fund is reopened. You can donate. You can support that initiative. Go take a look at that. The story's right there now on Madison365.org on the front page. And there's a link there to how you can donate and support that fund as well. So that's all I have for you today. Appreciate your attention. Appreciate all the questions. Appreciate you getting me up to speed on the vaccine thing. I really, you guys are the best. You're very helpful. I appreciate your tuning in, and we will see you again tomorrow.
This is 365 Media.